captioning for News 12 is brought to you by Kenneth Nugent. From the station that's on your side, this is News 12 at 6 o'clock.
Burying your children, that is a thought no parent ever wants to think about and should never have to. For 21 families of children and teachers in Uvalde, Texas, that is the tragic reality they're facing right now. Looking live now in Thompson, where the community there is coming together, honoring those victims of gun violence in Texas and all across the river region. How tonight's first step towards healing is part of a much larger goal of change. We'll have that story coming up.
But first, new in the last hour, the Columbia County coroner says a 10-year-old is dead after a house fire in Martinez.
This fire broke out on Sarah Creek Court around 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's off Columbia Road. You can see a heavy response by rescue officials when we got to the scene just after 3 o'clock. We're told deputies had to actually force their way into the home. The flames were intense. When they got inside, they found one child upstairs in a bedroom. Later, they found that 10-year-old behind the couch in the living room. Deputies say he was taken to the hospital, to the burn center, but did not survive his injuries. The sheriff's office says the children were home alone at the time, but they do not know how this fire got started. We're going to follow up with law enforcement to find out more details about a tragic situation, a deadly fire taking the life of a 10-year-old in Columbia County.
New plans announced today for the old Regency Mall in South Augusta. For nearly 2 decades, this blighted property has sat unused. And today, city officials say they're in talks with the current owner of the property to redevelop the new site into new housing, a grocery store, and resources for students. Our Kennedy Harris shows what could be in store for South Augusta.
One commissioner said this mall has held South Augusta hostage. Just the presence of this 50 acres of blight has stunned growth in South Augusta for decades. This new proposal will bring back some life to this area.
We're standing here today on a property that's been talked about in our community for the last 25 years.
25 years of big plans, 25 years of decay, 25 years of nothing.
I realize there may be skepticism, but this opportunity is different.
The new plan, a mixed-use development called Cardinal Town Square. They'll use the inside of what's left of the old mall to create a performing arts theater, fitness center, academic center, and grocery store. Outside of the structure, they'll build thousands of apartment units and restaurant space.
We always talk about the potential that's there. Now we're starting to see what the potential could actually look like.
With help from the Augusta Development Authority and local architects, the plans have been in the works for a little over a year. We noticed bulldozers back in October of 2020. Shortly after, the new city blight ordinance and a Senate bill put pressure on Regency's owners to do something.
That's one of the things that South Augusta has been missing out on is new development. So as we look at big projects, especially something of this magnitude, the opportunities are endless.
The goal is not only revitalization for Regency, but the entire corridor.
For South Augusta and that part of the community that has felt as if nobody was really paying attention for so long, finally help is on the way.
The plan will have to be approved by commission first, and that'll take about 6 to 8 weeks. Right after that, they can start construction. We did ask, but they have no idea what the timeline will be for when it might be finished. Reporting from Regency, Kennedy Harris, on your side.
The owners will foot the bill for that project, not the city. They didn't tell us how much it'll cost, but the Development Authority says it'll be the largest mixed-use project in Augusta history if it's approved.
Also this evening, the Augusta Public Service Committee just approving a motion to amend the city ordinance allowing for tiny homes. This is something brought before Commission about a year ago to help out with the affordable housing crisis in Augusta. Right now, the issue is that tiny homes don't fall under the same regulations and inspections as a regular home. Commissioner Jordan Johnson says tiny homes could especially help young home buyers.
Across the country, tiny homes have become a trend as a cheaper option for folks who can't afford regular housing options. And so here in the city of Augusta, there is an appetite for tiny homes.
The commissioner wants to model Augusta's own effort off of Savannah's The Cove at Dundee, which is a tiny home community for military veterans there on the coast. Much more news ahead. Let's give you a live look out.
And into the 80s and eventually 60s by tomorrow morning. Now here's our vantage point from Beach Island. We're looking toward Aiken on this viewpoint. You actually can see that thunderstorm there off in the distance. Current temperatures here in Augusta now falling back to the mid-80s, about 87 degrees as you're heading out the door in the Augusta area and elsewhere around the CSRA. Still in the 90s. places like Edgefield and Aiken, 90 to about 92, and right around 89 degrees as you're heading out the door in Louisville. So any outdoor plans that you have this evening, you should be in pretty good shape for that. We're seeing those temperatures sinking to those mid-80s, 89 to about 87 degrees by about 7 o'clock. Much more in the forecast coming up in about 10 minutes.
Anthony, thanks. Today, families for 19 children and two teachers started laying their loved ones to rest in Uvalde, Texas. The latest tragedy breaking the hearts of millions across the country over lives lost in senseless gun violence. In about a half hour, a local community says they're going to take the first step towards healing for those victims in Texas and here at home. Sloan O'Cone joining us now live from Thompson for that vigil. And Sloan, we know tonight is about sending prayers to the grieving families, but this really hits close to home for this community. Tell us why.
Exactly. Well, McDuffie County is a small county. They're around the same population size as Uvalde, and so they say that if it can happen there, it can happen here. And so things are quiet out here right now, but you can see they're just getting ready, starting to set up over there. But the police department and sheriff's office say they're offering up their prayers and honoring the lives of those lost in Uvalde shooting and those impacted by gun violence here at home. But after tonight, they say it's time to take action because they refuse to have a repeat of any more tragedy.
We've reported on nearly 20 deadly shootings across the river region since the beginning of this year. Children, young adults, innocent bystanders, all lost to preventable acts. It's why people across the country are calling for change. And here in McDuffie County, their law enforcement is responding.
Taking, this awful repeat incident that happened in Uvalde and saying it's not going to happen in Thompson McDuffie. We are going to be prepared. We are prepared. And that's our stance.
Their next step, working with the district attorney's office to get illegal guns off the streets.
It is a concern. Clearly, we are taking firearms off of 14, 15, 16-year-olds. No way, shape, or form should a 14-year-old be carrying a Glock with an extended magazine on the streets, and that's what we're seeing. And it's terrifying.
Starting to work with the schools and with the community.
We need the help. Law enforcement cannot do this alone. It don't only take pastors and other leaders, it's going to take the whole community.
Because all of us go to school, or the grocery store, to the movies, or out to dinner. And none of us should be nervous to do so.
We're not immune to it, and we just want to be proactive about it.
And the Thompson Police Department and McDuffie Sheriff's Office want to emphasize they're not focusing on taking everyone's guns, but taking those illegal guns and those guns away from people who may misuse them. Now, the vigil is set to start at 6:30. People are already starting to file in, but it'll be here tonight at the Thompson McDuffie Government Complex.
Really puts it in perspective when you think of the size of Uvalde. We all know Thompson. We all know that community. So it's true. I mean, it can happen anywhere.
Sloan, thanks for the live update there.
In Washington County, we are continuing coverage on two people killed in a weekend shooting, including a teenager. The coroner says they are 17-year-old William Lowry and 30-year-old Christopher Dunn. We're told they were shot in an 80s to 90s themed party at Larry Mitchell Ballpark. That's on Suburban Drive. Officials say an altercation broke out between a crowd of around 1,000 people. So far, no one's been charged in the shooting. Deputies say they do have people they're looking at as suspects, but if you have any information, call the sheriff's office. Air quality in Augusta, it's an issue we've reported on over the last year, and earlier this month we told you Augusta ranks 25th in the nation for year-round particle pollution trends.
And today the company Erebus and Augusta's Development Authority were in court asking a judge to sign off on state money to start the process towards a new copper recycling plant in town, but there are some concerns. The judge approving that $760 million bond. The company says the plan would bring 125 jobs to the area. The Savannah Riverkeeper, though, says the plant would also add 30 more hazardous chemicals to our air. Approval for the plant would still have to go through commission. We're following up with the city to see about that timeline and their stand on when it comes to opening that.
South Carolina early voting polls are
over the next couple of days, mid to upper 90s, both tomorrow, Thursday, as well as on Friday. Both going to be tracking the chance for a few scattered showers and storms. The full forecast coming up next.
And a local 4-year-old surviving an accidental shooting, not expected to live, much less walk again. Now she's stepping over obstacles on her journey to recovery.
Time and every time Kemp gambles for votes, Georgians lose.
In spite inspiring pictures from the Children's Hospital of Georgia. They call this a victory lap ceremony. This is done for trauma survivors.
You might remember this young lady, Joelle Curry. We've covered her story over the last couple of years. Accidentally shot in the abdomen by one of her family members, and you can see the princess crown, the sash for her, as the doctors lined the hallway as she took those steps.
Joelle was not expected to survive, but last Thursday she walked across the second floor of the Children's Hospital. Really a miracle.
It really is when you go back and think. But yeah, not expected to survive, and now celebrating steps at the Children's Hospital.
Yeah, they do miracles every day.
Just amazing. Let's have a look outside now as we.
A local Army veteran has worked with some of the biggest and most important cybersecurity agencies in the U.S. at this point. That includes the NSA, Department of Defense, and Cyber Command at Fort Gordon.
And now he wants to bring all that experience to students across the area. For students looking to get into IT and cybersecurity, this could be a gateway to success. Wrdw joining us now live in the newsroom to tell us more about these plans.
Yeah, Daniel Jackson is a teacher at the Academy of Richmond County. It's been his goal to get more students into the local workforce here in the CSRA. He sat down with us and shared his plans to do just that. For Army veteran Daniel Jackson, school wasn't always his first passion while growing up in Augusta.
I was a dropout here, and while in school here, I can remember the feeling that I had where I just felt as if I didn't know enough about the world to make certain decisions about my future.
So he went into the Army, where he worked in information technology for 20 years.
Started off with working on radios and antennas, kind of grew to working on the computers and server side with switches and routers.
Now he's looking to make a change in schools across the CSRA.
I return back to the community and I see a lot of that still happening, where we don't have enough resources in the education system.
His plan is to improve career, technical, and agricultural education opportunities for students. This would include the NSA, Army Cyber Command, Georgia Cyber Center, and other major corporate companies to build a pipeline in our local schools.
I believe that having all of those key players at the table, trying to pump resources into education, can basically help us solve a lot of the problems that we're seeing.
This program is aimed to help curb violence in our community, fill open positions in local industries, and lower the high school dropout rates.
All those people coming together, we can actually utilize the CSRA as a template, an example for change.
Jackson says that he has been in touch with several school districts in the area about improving the pipeline from schools to the real world. He says Cisco Systems is ready to build a replica lab in schools to help train these students to get them into jobs in our local area here.
That could be some rich experience for our local kids. Thanks a lot for that, Will. Well, the Change Initiative, hoping to break down barriers to equal access for food. How Augusta's locally grown is putting that motto, health is wealth, into action.
Our first alert commitment to you is now 5 meteorologists, all the tools, the latest technology, and the largest team of 5 meteorologists. News 12, NBC 26 First Alert Weather on your side.
A new plan to cut cancer rates right here at home. The Georgia Cancer Center says some of the way to do it comes down to what we eat.
Things we can change. They say the cancer risk can be attributed to everything from food to smoking. Claire Allen shows us a new partnership aimed at getting fresh food into one part of Augusta.
People who live at the Peabody Apartments now have access to fresh fruits and vegetables here right at their front door.
Dorothy Dozier has lived at Peabody Apartments on Walton Way for almost 14 years and says it's been hard getting fresh produce.
Well, you had to go to the grocery store, and we don't have one in the neighborhood, so that means you got to go out. It was difficult.
Now she doesn't have to go far to get the nutrients she needs.
This is a blessing here. We really, really, truly need it.
Georgia Cancer Center, Augusta Locally Grown, and the Augusta Housing Authority have come together to bring fresh produce to people who live in Peabody Apartments.
We supply the fresh produce from local farmers for the market. We'll supply it weekly, and it comes directly from your neighborhood farmer.
Many other residents have to ride a bus or arrange transportation to the grocery store, but now Peabody's Garden is eliminating those barriers.
So Food Swamp is where you might have access to a convenience store or
something similar, but you don't have access to a full grocery store.
The store will be stocked weekly with fresh produce like carrots, peaches, onions, and cabbage, just to name a few. The Georgia Cancer Center and Augusta Locally Grown say that this is just one of the many farmer markets that will be coming to people living in public housing. In downtown Augusta, Claire Allen, on your side.
On your sideline.
Next. You're watching News 12 on your side.
The Marines taught me how.
Flights. That and more tonight on the CBS Evening News.
Taking you back out to Thompson now. We're live over there where a vigil is just minutes away from getting started. The community coming together, honoring gun violence victims in Uvalde, Texas, and here at home.
Thompson McDuffie's police chief leading tonight's vigil, saying the next step is taking action to protect local families, making sure that they are prepared in every way they can be. We're going to have more from Sloan O'Cone from this vigil and plans for action coming up on News 12 at 7 o'clock and 11 tonight. But we also want to show you, this is a memorial being held in Uvalde, Texas, as we speak, showing you some live pictures there.
Live pictures of that event, and look at the size and scope of that memorial there. It's just grown so large, and I don't even know if the people there in the community are aware of the ripple effects all across the country. Communities like Thompson coming together tonight to pray about those families, to support them, and to do something about the gun violence.
Demanding change, and those ripple effects are being felt in small communities like McDuffie County, the exact same size and population, which really puts into perspective what this small community is going through.
We will head back to McDuffie County for that at 11. Anthony?
All right, guys.